Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The title outside says deploying the Lakehouse at Discovery Plus. Here it's saying at Warner Brother Discovery. So I'm going to start a little bit about first who I am and then who we are at WBD, where we all work. So I'm engineering director at Warner Brother Discovery, also known as WBD. I lead some of the data, ML, and growth efforts for our direct-to-consumer DTC streaming business. I work at the SF office, which is just a few blocks from here. Really excited to come here, talk today about our data journey, and especially the data journey with Databricks, and how in the last year and a half we've tried to gear the company towards being more data-driven and making the most of the data that we collect. So before I get started, who are we? So we at Warner Brother Discovery started as a very strong suite of brands, starting at the top with HBO, Discovery, CNN, HGTV, Cartoon Network, DC Comics, Looney Tunes, a lot of them very familiar to everybody. What started out as a way for Discovery to acquire Warner Media in April 2022 emerged as a very strong brand of WBD, where we launched a new app called Max a little over a month ago, where the idea is to get all our content, all our brands together in one app, and that's Max. If people haven't seen the ads for the one to watch, it's kind of a pretty big step towards bringing all the data and all the content together. So the talk today is our data story. For people who know our brands, the various brands of Discovery and Warner Brothers, it's pretty aligned with storytelling. We celebrate every story. We want to hear stories. We want to create stories. We want to distribute them. We want to make them available for people. What I'm going to do in this talk is give people a flavor of our data story. The only caveat is I can't go into a lot of details with our data story, but a few of my team is here. If people want to come talk to us afterwards, we're happy to kind of dig into the details. But for the sake of the presentation, there are some limitations on what we can disclose. So the POC, or the proof of concept with Databricks, started for us with our original streaming app of Discovery Plus. On Discovery Plus, for people who are probably as old as me, would probably remember the Discovery Channel. That used to be my favorite channel growing up. So there was Shark Week, and there was a lot of animal shows, mainly on TV, though. With the streaming application, we brought all of those things on the app. We launched it successfully in 2021. And what we started as a POC for Discovery Plus with Databricks emerged into our data platform for Max. Starting out with sort of what we really cared about for the data platform, I would say that this is pretty much what across the industry are very strong principles that data platforms adhere to. For our use case, which is streaming media, a streaming app with a lot of good content, and the ability to sort of bring a lot of catalogs together, and obviously seeing subscriber growth grow very significantly from the time we started to where we are now. The idea is for us to kind of look at the data stack left to right and move as much sort of our focus in these 3 areas of work, shift towards left. And what I mean by that, I'll come to it shortly. So the first principle is efficient compute. We absolutely want to be at the sort of the best sort of step of, or the best platform where we are able to optimize costs. We are able to get to a place where there's a single source of truth across the company. And now if you think of all the brands that we carry, and it's from TV to linear to media, .com, it's a really big portfolio. For all of that, this data platform is sort of your source of truth for all your downstream applications. There is metrics, there is personalization, there is recommendation, there is growth modeling, there is marketing. There's all kinds of really cool applications that are going to sit downstream of your platform. All of that managed with extremely high compute power as well as efficiency, leading to cost benefit. Everybody here knows how expensive it is to run fancy models. There was an awesome talk on LLMs. Training good models is very expensive. Everybody knows that. However, we do see areas where I think Databricks does a very good job helping us sort of manage those costs. So that's our number 1 pillar. Second is data quality. Absolutely no point in collecting data if it's just garbage in, garbage out. We have to be able to take it to a point where it's usable, where it's actually making sense, and for us to be able to monitor it, for us to be able to reliably tell when we can actually use a model, where we can actually use a pipeline, or if it's everything just lacking quality. And the last and not the least is the protection. We have to be very, very conservative on our privacy adherence. We have to make sure across the board governance and security controls are very easily sort of tied into the platform. At the same time, all the data that's flowing to the downstream is sort of within those governance requirements, as well as helping us move faster with respect to experimentation. So this is a very generic, like I was saying, I'm not able to give a lot of detail, but this is where everybody starts when they start using Databricks. So we started out with our POC, looking at this and looking at our data and saying, yes, we can make it into a bronze, silver, gold flow and use it for all our downstream applications. Slowly, what ended up evolving, that just evolved to a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more sort of more details around that started to emerge, where at a high level, we basically have 3 main steps of collecting all the data, which is typically what we refer to as ingress. There is a fair bit of the compute that happens at the transform layer. And then obviously there is the activation part, where you're either using it for your reporting use cases, your experimentation, content intelligence, marketing use cases, and so on. So if you see at the transform layer, you still have your bronze, silver, gold, which is sort of the medallion architecture, the Lakehouse idea sort of based on that architecture. We've started out, stuck to it for most part. However, I think as we started to sort of dig deeper into things, we started to realize like there are important things that are sort of up-leveled and abstracted out from what we see here. And the critical piece here is the goal layer. What I think Databricks is very sort of aptly calling it gold is because I think that is exactly what it is for companies. It is gold. It is really what everybody is after. In our experience, this is the hardest piece. What you do here and how you're going to do it effectively and efficiently is actually going to determine your entire data strategy. So what emerged to be this high-level distribute function for us evolved into a semantic layer. This is not a new concept or a new terminology. It is very much what it says, and you're making sense of the data. You're adding semantics on top of what is just lexical at that point. You just have data flowing in. You don't know how to interpret it. But what's critical is here is where your data platform and your business stakeholders and people who are going to make sense of that data come together. So you have to be extremely careful as well as extremely diligent on how you're going to build your semantic layer. We're going to probably have more talks on that, just on that piece, because it's such an intricate and an important piece in the architecture. But sort of moving on, this is one of the slides from Brian, who's sitting here. So the high-level concept of the semantic layer is really, again, making sense of the data stream. We move from a stream of data to a set of facts. So if you're thinking of a stream of subscriber events or a stream of client events where people are viewing or logging in and so on, that is just a steady stream of events coming in. Your first kind of line of defense is, let me make sense of what this is. What are the events that are coming out? What are the facts? So you're now building your fact tables, your fact layer, where every table sort of corresponds to an entity, and you're essentially building an entity relationship graph. Everybody in this room probably understands how complex that can get. However, for its streaming application, it doesn't get as unwieldy as, say, if you were doing a knowledge graph for the web. So you're not dealing with that kind of complexity. It is a little bit more bounded. However, you do get into a lot of details around, is this plan type something that you want to interpret it this way, or did the business stakeholder mean it to be something else? And so this is where you're very, very tightly coupled with business. From the fact, you move on to your derived. What we are calling it as derived layer is essentially moving it to one level sort of up in the aggregation. And finally, you'll go into the analytic layer. The analytic layer is where you're going to consume your, you're going to start generating your metrics from the analytic layer. At the same point here, just going to see if it goes back. Instead of the analytic layer, there is also, at the same place, you can either have an analytic layer or a feature store. So the feature store is where your ML applications are going to start reading from, and the analytic layer is where your metrics are going to be generated from. Sort of moving into a slightly more of a focus for the entire company is, again, data quality. What I mentioned in the very beginning, the sort of the central pillar for us is sort of monitoring data quality, measuring to what extent we can actually trust this data that we have, to what extent can we use the data effectively for downstream applications. Here is where we used Databricks to a large extent sort of helping us first visualize what is really going on with our data. So this is an example of a fairly simple dashboard, and this is built with Databricks. A fairly simple dashboard that is essentially taking in a release or a release candidate or a binary, if you want to just call it a binary. And with that, you're essentially trying to figure out to what level of validity does my binary have. And it's kind of compared against a set of validations. It's compared against some completeness checks and so on. In the beginning, we were a little skeptical, thinking it's really, really simple checks. Like this is really not anomaly detection, or this isn't really fancy modeling for identifying any kind of bad actors or anything like that. To our surprise, doing this got us to pretty much 90% of where we want to be. And obviously, that rest of the 10% is extremely hard to do, but it's interesting to see how simple validations and simple checks can get you a really long way. So this is just an example of using Databricks to sort of help us with data quality. Having gone through a little bit of sort of an overview of where we started with our 3 principles of compute, quality, and governance, I want to spend a little bit time now on talking about what really worked for us with Databricks and where we see some challenges. Obviously, I'm going to just call them potential challenges because I've heard so much in the last day or so that's upcoming in terms of new and good features that maybe some of the problems are already solved. So we're really interested to find out more about those. But in terms of our real success stories, with starting with a POC with Discovery Plus, moving on to Max with our entire data platform based on Databricks, compute definitely is sort of high up there. We've had great control over the cluster allocation, the ability to very seamlessly run notebooks, jobs, making it much easier for analysts and scientists to kind of dig into the data, analyze what's out there, make it sort of really simple. So big success story. Ability to do governance, ability to do read and modify and delete records, another really big plus. We've had trouble with our systems earlier in not giving us that much control. Unity catalog. There's a talk later today at, I think, 4 o'clock, where we have a much more in-depth sort of use case on how WBD has used Unity catalog and how that has really helped us to sort of manage our governance, manage access, and across multiple teams that are all using data through Databricks. Feature development, having the ability to write Python and Scala notebooks, I think it's all sort of embedded in that sort of this package that we do have an easier way for us to sort of use the platform, have access to the data, and do all the processing that we care about. Potential challenges. It wouldn't be a POC if I didn't mention what things we do want more from Databricks, what we see ourselves sort of struggling with or sort of dealing with in terms of challenges. In our experience, Databricks is it has a very engineering sort of a mindset of people coming to use Databricks have to be able to kind of dig into what there is in terms of documentation, in terms of learnings, in terms of the videos and so on. And there is a lot of stuff out there. In my experience, as we have sort of transformed a large part of the company from using other competitors to Databricks, this comes up as a surprise to me that people have a hesitation towards jumping in. And there is a notion of I am an analyst or I'm an analytical engineer. How much time is it going to take me to kind of learn this? Or I keep hearing about, I don't know Databricks. And I'm like, it's not really a language, or it's not a sort of a, it's a very powerful tool, but I think it's a little bit harder to use compared to its competitors. So that's sort of one challenge, especially when our company is sort of going through this massive transformation. It does come across as a challenge that we will kind of have to work through. The second one is sort of along the same lines. I think there is a lot of flexibility in terms of using efficient compute. There is a lot of power that people who are using Databricks, who get the access to the data, they're able to do a lot. However, sort of going back to our conversation on just the semantic layer and making sense of the data, business-ready data sets, that part for us hasn't been very easy, partly because of where Databricks is in their sort of evolution, as well as the fact that there is a little bit of being friendly or not friendly for analysts and people who have traditionally been in reporting and sort of have a way of looking at data more from a business perspective. So that has been a challenge for us. We seem to have a good handle on it so far with our semantic layer. However, again, like compared to the competitors, there is a little bit more room for us to kind of get better there. We have encountered cases where there is investment required from our side to keep up with the operational excellence, with on-call support, with general support from us, in addition to what we get from Databricks. And so it's a potential challenge. The other thing, I think, probably also how things are evolving, not having a completely rolled out ML stack, and for us, we are sort of really at the cusp of using ML for everything that we do. Not having a fully ready stack sort of always has led us to kind of consider other options, trying to take data from Databricks into other systems to train models, make it such that people have the ability to sort of use our own ML platform and kind of use the data. So I think this is changing. From what I've seen in the talks, there is just so much more that is coming out this year. So we're sort of very excited to see all the stuff that's happening on the ML side. It does lead, the way we are sort of currently set up, it does lead to divergence, data divergence, meaning one system is using one stream of data that's getting filtered and consumed in a certain way. Another stream is using it in a different way. At the end of it, you have metrics and you have models that are not really comparable. Data divergence obviously is a big issue for everybody. This is one area we're going to invest quite heavily in and start to kind of see how to sort of really catch up with Databricks as well as sort of push Databricks a little bit to kind of bring some of our use cases sort of become more coherent with our use cases. And last but not the least, again, dashboarding, monitoring. The competitor landscape here is very rich. It's not easy to convince everybody in the company to use Databricks dashboards. We do use it for a fair bit of use cases. However, there are places where we do use other dashboards, and that's obviously not the best sort of data stack. We would rather have something end-to-end that doesn't have multiple hops, that doesn't require data to go from one system to another. So that's sort of where I would like to stop.